Hi guys, in this video we're going to talk about chapter 26, the aggregate demand, aggregate supply model. Now this is one of the most difficult chapter in the entire book because this is where we really go into the bigger picture of the economy here. So make sure to take this video slowly. When I have any questions, email me, okay? All right, so let's get started. So big questions. What are the aggregate demand, aggregate supply model? What is aggregate demand? What is aggregate supply? And how does aggregate demand supply help us understand the economy? Now, in the previous chapter, we learned how the regular supply demand model works. But the thing with regular supply demand curve, you have that only reflecting the demand supply for the smaller picture. So such as, one market, one individual good. So how do consumers and business interact in that one market? Now, the aggregate demand supply curve, we're looking at the entire picture now. Okay, so macroeconomics, remember this is just definition we studied previously, is the economy on the bigger scale. So the entire picture here, that's your macroeconomics, the big picture. Okay, so we're looking at the long run growth and development. We also look at the short-term fluctuations because the economy, in the short run, it always changes, but in the long run, there might be a long-term trend going on. I mean, the same you can see this as the global warming crisis. Now, this really depends on what you believe, but the facts are the Earth is getting warmer. You can debate about what caused that, but the Earth is getting warmer. So the long trend for Earth is the temperature is increasing. But if you look at every season, every year with spring, summer, and fall, the temperature is fluctuating, right? So the economy, the temperature overall is increasing, but the short run, every season, the temperature goes up and down. So for economy, we have something similar. That for economy, that in the long run, economy is growing, so it's going upward, but you still have this, expansion, recession going on. So in the short run, it's still fluctuating. All right. So now what's a business cycle? So we talked about this before too. So business cycle is this short-term fluctuation in the economy. So such as your expansion, your contraction, your peak, your trough, that is our business cycle. And then and some evidence of the business cycle, you can look at this as our real economic growth. So anytime our real economic growth is changing, that is a reflection of our change in the economic condition, which is, the real GDP is increasing, that will be a expansion, or real GDP is decreasing, that will be a recession. Okay, and then unemployment can also be used as an indicator of our business cycle. That every time the economy is doing good, unemployment is low, and then if the economy is doing bad, unemployment is high. All right, so this chart over here shows you our real GDP and our recession. So our three major recessions back in the last 30 years, there was one in the beginning 1990s, and then there's one right about the turn of the century. That's where the dot-com bubble burst. And then there was the major one back in 2008. That was the Great Recession. So notice how in both three of this, our real GDP all decreased, right? So that is the definition, the very definition of a recession. Because anytime the real GDP is decreasing, so going down, that will be called a recession. Okay, and then the difference between recession and depression, the recession, you have normally 2 quarters of lower GDP, that's recession. A depression is when you have 4 quarters of lower GDP, that's depression. And that's why you see over here by about 2005, we also had a decreasing in real GDP, but because it's only 1 quarter, so we didn't count it as a recession. But if you have 2 quarters, that will be recession. All right, so this shows our unemployment rate. Now, we don't normally use unemployment rate to measure our real GDP, to measure our recession. Is that, I'm sorry, this is the still your real GDP. But, no, I'm sorry, the first time, this is your unemployment rate. So if you notice that this trend over here, every time unemployment rate is increasing, there might be a recession going on in the economy. But most economists will try to avoid using unemployment rate to measure our recession. Is that unemployment rate is not very reliable. That sometimes when the unemployment rate changes, it might be because the economy is doing good. So So guys, if you go back to the chapter on unemployment rate, make sure look into the term called discouraged worker. So discouraged worker or phantom workers, or phantom unemployment can make our unemployment data less reliable. Okay, so most likely we're going to use our real GDPs, but unemployment can also be used as an indicator of how good or how bad the economy is. And if you see any major increase in unemployment rate, that will be called recession. All right, so for our aggregate demand, aggregate supply, so aggregate demand is the demand for all final goods and service in the economy, and the aggregate supply is the supply of all final goods and service in the economy. Now, this keyword here you see very often is called final good. Now, this appeared in your chapter 19 on the definition for real GDP or GDP. So remember, final good is anything that's produced finished, that's ready for the end user. So normally this would be our consumers who are going to use them for their own personal use. That's a final good and service. Okay, so the demand for final good and service in the economy, that's the total demand for everything. That's your aggregate demand, and an aggregate supply is the total supply of all the final good and service. All right, so for our aggregate demand curve, there are 4 components. You have your consumption, investment, government spending, and net export. Now, notice this looks pretty similar. You've probably seen this before somewhere, right? So that is also your GDP, right? Remember the GDP has 4 components too: consumption, investment, government spending, net export. So your GDP has the same component as our aggregate demand curve, because for everything we produce, for all the final goods and service produced, they're all consumed in these 4 places. So either by consumers, either by business for investment, government spending, or we're going to sell this overseas as net export. All right, so your aggregate demand curve is just like a regular demand curve. It's downward sloping. But what you need to notice is that for the aggregate demand curve, on the vertical axis, it's called the price level. Now, before on the old demand curve, the vertical axis was called demand because that was the demand for individual good. But price level, this is the average prices of everything in the economy. So again, this is the big picture now. We don't just look at one thing, we look at the entire economy. So price level is the average prices of all the goods and services, and then on the horizontal quantity, it's not a quantity anymore. I'm sorry, on the horizontal axis, it's not quantity anymore. It's our real GDP. And then for real GDP, this is the quantity of everything we're producing in the economy. So again, so price level, the average price of everything. Real GDP, this is the quantity of everything. So looking at the big, huge picture now. Okay, all right. So aggregate demand curve is negative. So it shows this inverse relationship between your quantity of aggregate demanded and the price level. And the reason why, because they have 3 factors here. So wealth effect, interest rate effect, and also international trade effect. So let's look at each one. Okay, so first, wealth effect. Then how much our wealth is, the individual accumulated asset, depends on how much the price level is. So imagine the price level goes higher, then we believe we have more wealth. Therefore, what do? We probably buy more stuff, right? So number one reason why your aggregate demand curve is downward sloping, because the wealth can change due to price level change. Now, vice versa, let's suppose your wealth stay constant. Okay, so let's suppose you have $10,000 in the bank account. So $10,000 in the bank account, and then tomorrow price level increases. Well, that's going to be bad for you because your $10,000 will be worth less now. Okay, so how much wealth you have depends on how much the price level is, and they're inversely related. So your wealth stays constant, but if your price level increases, your wealth go down. Vice versa, if your price level decreases, everything becomes cheaper, and then for how much money you have saved in the bank is now worth more money now. Well, that sounds pretty good. How does money worth more money? Your money saved in the bank now has more purchasing power. You can buy more stuff with it, right? So that's why between your wealth and then your price level, you're going to see this inverse relationship. That when the price level goes higher, our purchasing power goes down. When the price level goes lower, our purchasing power goes higher. So that's why how much your demand for the everything you buy will changes once the price level changes. Now, second is your interest rate effect. So the interest effect, this has to deal with our companies, mostly companies. So companies always borrow money. This was covered in our previous chapters called loanable fund market. So whenever the interest rate changes, so how much it costs company to borrow money changes. Now let's suppose our interest rate goes higher. Then what do companies do? They will borrow less money and there'll be less investment available. So investment goes down. Okay, or vice versa. If your interest rate goes down, and then what happens is that there will be more money borrowed and the investment increases, and then therefore our aggregate demand curve would be increased as well, because this is on the investment part of our GDP. And then last, we talk about this. Okay, let's talk about this. So so when the interest rate level changes, this will affect how much our investment is. So imagine if interest rate goes higher, so we offer consumers more interest, and then there will be less money saved. So your investment, the quantity investment actually goes down. So when investment goes down, then your real GDP will be decreased. Okay, so that's why between your interest rate and then your real GDP, there is an inverse relationship. Now, next one is our international trade effect. So for international trade, this depends on the exchange rate differentials. So imagine that we're going to compare between US dollar and Chinese yuan. So let's suppose US dollar becomes stronger. Well, that sounds pretty good, right? Stronger dollar means good. But in the net export business, a stronger dollar means bad. Because if you have a stronger dollar, that means everything produced in America is more expensive, and then everything produced overseas is cheaper. So while everything produced in America is more expensive, our export goes down, import goes up, and then net export goes down. And then vice versa, if you have a weak dollar, so everything produced in America is cheaper, so our price level goes down. So price level goes down, and then net export will go up, and then your aggregate demand curve, your real GDP will be increased. Okay, so again, between your domestic price level and then your net export, you're going to see this inverse relationship. That how much your home price is will inversely affect your amount of net export. Therefore, your aggregate demand curve is downward sloping. Okay, so all this goes back to our inverse relationship. All right, so because of those reasons, then your aggregate demand curve is downward sloping. So your wealth effect will change your consumption, your interest rate effect will change your investment, and then your international trade effect will change your net export. So therefore, your aggregate demand curve is downward sloping. All right, so whenever the price level change, you'll be moving on the same aggregate demand curve. So this three effect over here, you'll be moving on the same demand curve. But however, there will be situations you'll be asking to shift your aggregate demand curve. So those shifting aggregate demand curve is whenever something else besides price level change. Now, those something else, they're your consumption, investment, government spending, and net export. So whenever these four components change, something happens cause these four components to change, you're going to shift your demand curve. So first, let's talk about consumption. So the three factors can change your consumption. They're changing real wealth, so how much money you have, how much wealth you have, the change in expectation for the future, and then change in taxes. Now, for the change in real wealth, imagine the stock market goes up. So tomorrow the market, let's say for next month, market does very, very good, and then the value for stock market become doubled. And then for people who have money in the stock market or people who have money in the 401ks, they don't feel very happy. Then what do? They buy more stuff. So in this case, consumption will increase. When consumption increases, your aggregate demand curve will be shifting to the right. Okay, or there might be a widespread change in the real estate value. So let's suppose all of a sudden there is a housing boom, then all the homes in America become more expensive, and then for all those homeowners, their wealth just went up because their asset, their home, is now valuable. It's now more valuable. So what do they do? Then people tend to take a loan against their house, or people tend to be more confident about their future. Then they'll be spending more money, and the consumption goes higher. Now, next is our expectation. Now, this expectation is two-part. So first is your expectation for the future income. Now, if you know for sure that you're going to be very well off in the future, so let's suppose that you guys are working on your degree right now, and you know for sure that once you get your bachelor degree, your income goes higher. So what did I do? That will change your consumption for today. Then you're probably going to spend more money today. Now, vice versa, that if you expect that you might be laid off from work next week, then you're going to change your consumption today. You wouldn't buy that much stuff anymore today, right? You will save the money on the side. So consumption depends on your expected future income, and also depends on your consumer confidence. So how well do our consumer believe the economy is? That if everybody all believe the economy is going to be very good for the next couple of years, then we tend to make more big ticket item purchase. So buy a new car, buy a new computer, buy new appliances when we believe the economy is going to be very good in the future. Now, however, if it's vice versa, then in 2009, 2008, nobody was buying a new car. Nobody was buying appliances. And then if you guys interested, going back into history a little bit, so look into what the economy was 10 years ago, Google GM red tag sale. So GM, General Motors, red tag sale. Okay. So what happened was that in those years, in 08, 09, 2010, the economy was so bad that consumers don't have any confidence in the future of the economy. Nobody was buying car anymore. And then the sales of new car really tanked. Now, what happened was that the sales of used car actually went up, because everybody was all feeling very insecure about the future. So GM was having a hard time selling cars. So like every summer in those years, GM will have a red tag sale. So their red tag sale is actually called employee pricing. So you go in there, you see this red tag on each car, and then you cannot negotiate on the price of the car, but those prices are very cheap. Sometimes like a $10,000 off MSRP. The reason why, because consumers have no confidence, we don't buy cars anymore. Okay. Now, vice versa. Today, economy is doing very good. So consumers feel pretty confident about the future. So we buy more cars, and that's why if you go to Ford, GM, and Chrysler, you notice all those big trucks, all those big SUVs. They're going very fast in the dealership. That people are buying them from left and right because we feel confident about the future, and then we make this more big ticket item purchase. Okay. And then last one is your tax. Anytime our consumer tax change can also change our consumption level. Now this will be your income tax, your sales tax. So those will all have an impact on our consumer consumption level. Okay, and whenever consumer consumption level change, we're gonna shift our aggregate demand curve, increase to the right, decrease to your left. Okay. All right, next investment. So investment, the first factor can change our investment is our investor confidence. So for investor confidence, this is just like your consumer confidence, but it's on the company side. So how do company feel about the future? So if your company feeling very secure about the future, that y'all believe the economy is going to be very good, there will be a high demand for your product in the near future, then company tend to have more investment going out. They tend to invest into more factories, more buildings, more machines. So investment increase. And then second is the interest rate in the market. So whenever the interest rate in the market change, that will change your level of demand for investment. So if interest rate become cheaper, then company borrow more money, then investment will increase to the right. But if interest rate become higher, then company borrow less money, and then investment go down. Okay. And then one thing we can alter our interest rate is by changing the quantity of money. So money is like everything else in the economy. The more you have it, the lower the value. The less you have it, the higher the value. Now remember, the value of money or the price of money is just called interest rate. So every time we increase the quantity of money, interest rate goes lower. And then vice versa, if any time we decrease quantity of money, interest rate goes higher. So that's how we can change our interest rate in the economy by altering how much our money supply is in the economy. Now I'm going to talk about more of this in the later chapters. Okay, so today just know that your interest rate can be affected by the quantity of money in the economy, and that interest rate will shift your investment. And then investment changes, we're going to shift your equity demand curve, increase to the right and decrease to your left. Now next is a shift in our government spending. Now for this government spending, there is really no factor that can affect our government spending, because governments, what they do, especially our U.S. Congress, is that they will decide how much money they will spend every couple of years, right? So it's up to the government to decide how much money they will spend. So every time that our government decides to spend more money, then equity demand curve is shifting to the right. And then if any time our government decide to spend less money, and the equity demand curve is shifting to the left. Later on, we're going to study a chapter called fiscal policy, and you will see how the change in government spending can affect our equity demand curve. And last one is our international trade market. Whenever your net export change, this will change our equity demand curve. So there are two factors can change your net export. The first factor is your income for foreign countries. So imagine foreign countries have more income now. Now what do? They will tend to buy more U.S. produced good. Now we normally don't think like that. We normally don't believe that the foreign countries actually buy anything from America, but they do buy a lot of stuff. One example you guys can think about Harley Davidsons, the motorcycles. If you go to Europe, if you go to Asia, people do buy that motorcycle, Harley Davidson. That's like the symbol of American freedom, right? So if foreign income goes higher, so foreigners have more money now, what do? They will buy more Harley Davidsons, and our net export will increase. But if the foreigner has less money, then our net export will decrease. And next one, we mentioned this before, is our exchange rate. So every time exchange rate change will affect our net export market. So remember this, a strong US dollar will hurt our net export. A weak US dollar will help our net export. Because a weak US dollar means the dollar is cheaper, so everything produced in America is cheaper, and therefore going to sell more export and have less import, and our net export can improve. Okay, so those four factors: consumption, investment, government purchase, net export. Whenever those four factors changes, you're going to shift your equity demand curve. Now guys, if I were you, I will write this down in your notes. All these factors here, I will write it on somewhere that's very, very obviously visible in your notes. So every time you're not sure which one will affect which demand or supply curve, come to this list over here. Okay, so because this list, this is what you will do. If you see something like this happens, you know it's on consumption or investment or government spending or net export, and that's how you know which one to shift. Okay, all right. So let's look at supply. So for aggregate supply, now what the company will do, their goal for each company is to maximize profit. Now profit coming from your revenue minus cost. So cost, they're your input, such as your labor, your capital, your raw material, so the stuff the company need to produce the goods and services. And then once they produce it, they will sell this good. And this stuff they sell, remember this is called good and service. In this chapter, we call this output. So the stuff you need is called input, but the stuff you produce is called output. Now there are also two prices here. You have your input price. So input price are the price of your wage, the price you pay for rent, the price you pay for borrow money, the interest rate, and then the output price, they're the price that's the stuff you sell, the price that's set by the firms and consumers in the market. All right, so for our aggregate supply curve, aggregate supply curve, we're going to have two types of aggregate supply curve. There's one called a long run and one called short run. So long run, it means that in the long run, all the prices you have will be flexible. All the costs you have will be flexible. But in the short run, that you're going to still have some type of cost called a fixed cost. Then this cost wouldn't change. So one example you can think of, think about rent. So how much rent company pays. Now, if you're talking about maybe from month to month, then rent is fixed. The rent wouldn't change because for most business, the rent is set by contract, so they don't change the rent every month. But if you look at the rent in long term, so if you suppose you ask a company how much was your rent 10 years ago, then company will tell you, oh, 10 years ago might be like a cheaper, more expensive. So rent become more flexible as the longer time you're talking about it. So in the long run, you have no fixed cost. But in the short run, you have fixed cost, such as rent, that wouldn't change in a short span of time. Okay, so in this chapter for aggregate supply curve, we're also going to say that wage is also fixed in the short run. Now, think about this as a very short term. So every weekly or every monthly payment, a paycheck. So how much you're getting paid, let's say per hour, is pretty fixed from week to week, right? But you might have a raise by end of the year, but at least from week to week, your wage is fixed. So that's called a short run cost. But after a year or so, once you get a raise from the company, then wage become flexible, and that's called long run cost. Okay, so in the short run you have fixed cost. In the long run, every cost are flexible. All right, so whenever your long run economy changes, your long run supply changes, this will not be affected by the price level. So long run supply changes, this will be your resource, your technology, your institutions. So whenever these three changes, you're going to shift your long run aggregate supply curve. And then guys, I want you to think back to something we learned back to the very beginning of the semester. Remember that this, well, I need a pen. Remember something like this? Remember what this was called? Remember this is called PPF, right? Your PPF measures the potential production for the economy, how much the economy can produce. Your long run aggregate supply curve looks like this. It's a straight line, and this straight line is the same thing as your PPF that shows you what is the potential output for the economy. Now, for this potential output for the economy, that we're based on that all the costs are flexible. Then once your costs become flexible, then companies or economy can only produce what the potential output is. So let me give you an example. Okay, let's suppose let's draw this our short run average supply curve. By the way, guys, your long run average supply curve is it's a vertical, but the short run is upward sloping. We're going to talk about why that is later, okay? But imagine right now there's you have a short run average supply curve that's upward sloping, and then it's price level on the vertical axis, and then real GDP on the horizontal axis. And then somewhere out here, you're going to have your natural rate of unemployment. So this is just how much our employment in the economy is. Now, let's suppose right now the economy is doing okay. So we're just at this intersection point over here. So we're just at our natural rate of unemployment. So the economy is doing pretty good. Everybody who want to have a job, and the economy doesn't have any surplus or shortages. Now, imagine something happens. Imagine tomorrow the economy does bad. They're going to move from the red point to the black point. Now, at this point over here, your price level will decrease. Now, when price level decreases, in the short run, your wage is fixed. The wage is not flexible. So when wage is not flexible, then company look at this situation over here says, oh, look, economy is slowing down now. That we don't have to produce that much stuff anymore. We're going to produce less stuff now. So for less stuff, our real GDP will be decreased to the left. So when real GDP decreases to the left, let's call this one U1. So real GDP goes down to U1. Now at U1, your U1 unemployment is going to be higher than your natural rate of unemployment. That is because your real GDP is decreasing now. So economy go to recession. During recession, your unemployment will increase. Now, when unemployment increases, there will be some workers who want to work but couldn't find a job, right? Now, what would that do to the economy? Then the workers will compete. When workers compete, wage will go down. And when wage goes down, company will hire more workers. So in that situation, when wage goes down and the company hire more workers, you're moving back to this point right here on the potential output. Okay, so that's why in the short run, that if you have this wage fixed, economy goes down, and then company hire less people. But in the long run, once wage become more flexible, then company hire more people, and you go back to this long run equilibrium. Now on the expansion, it looks very similar too. So for the expansion, we'll have the price level, we'll have the real GDP, and then we have our let's call this one long run equilibrium, or our long run aggregate supply curve. Long run aggregate supply curve. All right, so let's draw our short run aggregate supply curve. So short run aggregate supply curve. So again, we start from intersection over here at the middle. So right now economy is at this equilibrium, and then let's say next week something happens, that we have expansion, gonna be at this point. Now for this point, economy is doing very, very good. Therefore, economy, when the economy is doing very, very good, when wage is fixed in the short run. So economy doing very good, and then your unemployment rate goes down. Companies now compete for employees. When company compete for employees, in the long run, wage will go up. And when wage goes up, your costs become higher, and then company actually produce less now. So in the long run, when wage goes higher, your real GDP, here's this. So wage become higher, your real GDP will go down again. Okay, so how low will go? It will go from this point back to where the long run equilibrium is. So this long run equilibrium is like our potential output. That unless you have technology or resource or institution change, that you will always go back to your long run aggregate supply curve in the long run. Now in the short run, you might have fluctuations. You might have, to the left when you have a recession, to the right you have expansion, but in the long run, you will all go back to the long run aggregate supply curve. Okay, all right. So that's your long run aggregate supply curve. And then next, let's look at our short run. So for short run aggregate supply, let's talk about a little more for long run. So for long run aggregate supply curve, there are three factors that can shift your long run aggregate supply curve. They are changing resource, changing technology, and changing institution. So whenever these three changes, it will shift your aggregate supply curve, your long run aggregate supply curve. If it's increasing, we go to the right. If it's decreasing, we go to your left. And then if it's increasing, that means the economy is getting better. So that's a rightward shift. And a rightward shift, your natural rate of unemployment will stay the same. Because remember the natural rate of unemployment, if you go back to your chapter 20, I believe. So the natural rate of unemployment is always positive, because there will be frictional unemployment, there will be structural unemployment, so those do not change. So your natural rate of unemployment will stay the same, but what changes is how much our real GDP is. So real GDP will be either increasing when the economy is doing good with better technologies, or it might be decreasing if you ever lose something in the economy, so such as technology or resource, or you might have a social unrest. Okay. Now for the short run aggregate supply curve, there's three reasons why you have this positive slope for the short run aggregate supply curve. Can't spell. So positive slope for short run aggregate supply curve. All right, so 3 reasons: sticky input price, manual cost, and also money illusion. So let's look at each one. Okay, so for your sticky price, that means prices such as wage is fixed in the short run. The wage wouldn't change. When wage wouldn't change, company will have either higher or lower profit whenever price level changes. So we're assuming the price, the output price, the stuff companies sell are flexible, but wage is fixed. So once your price increases, wage stay the same, then your profit will go up. Okay, so at a higher profit, the company produces more good. Vice versa, if your price goes down, again, wage stay the same, then profit goes lower, then company produces less of it. So that's one reason why between price and then your real output, real GDP, for the supply curve, you have a positive slope. So at a higher price level, company produce more good, and a lower price level, company produce less good. Okay. All right. Next is a manual cost. So manual cost, this is how much cost company to change the menu price. Now, it costs company to change menu price. Imagine that you're a restaurant and you have a menu for all the items you have in the restaurant. Now, if you want to change the menu price, you're going to print all new menus for everything. It might not be worth it. So sometimes companies tend to, be a little lagging behind on the menu price. So even though their costs might be increasing or decreasing very frequently, but the menu price stay pretty constant from week to week or month to month. It might change like only once a year. So once you have this menu cost staying the same, when the price level increases, I hate it when this goes away. Here, let me try it over here. So when the price level changes, so this will be the price of everything else in the economy. So everything else in the economy, price changes, but the manual cost or the output cost for the stuff company sells stay the same. Now, when the price level changes, that means everything else becomes more expensive, but for whatever you sell stay the same. That means it's pretty cheap now. It's cheaper now, right? So therefore your aggregate supply curve will be increasing. Now, vice versa, if your price level decreases, so everything else becomes cheaper, but your production, your output price still stay the same, doesn't change. That means whatever you're producing now is more expensive, then our aggregate supply curve will be decreasing. Okay, so let me give you examples. Think about chicken fried rice. So chicken fried rice. By the way, if you guys ever work in a restaurant before, you will know CK stands for chicken, FR stands for fried rice. Okay, so let's suppose we have a business only produce chicken fried rice, and let's suppose right now in the marketplace, so when you go to HEB, Walmart, Kroger, the price for chicken goes higher, the price for rice goes higher. But for our restaurant, the price of chicken fried rice, because this is the menu price, we haven't changed it yet, so chicken fried rice still stay the same price. Well, if your customer comes and says, oh, look, when I go buy chicken and rice at the store, it's more expensive, but when you guys tell me the chicken fried rice is still the same price, so which means that your chicken fried rice might be even cheaper than the price in the store. So what do? I buy more chicken fried rice in the restaurant. Now, vice versa, if your chicken price goes down, if your rice price goes down, but in the restaurant, our chicken fried rice still stay the same, well, this is not good because everything else becomes cheaper, but we still sell our chicken fried rice at the same menu price, then consumers will buy less from us and the aggregate supply curve will be decreasing. Okay, so that's why between your price level and then your amount of aggregate supply, you have a positive relationship. They either both increase or they both decrease. Okay, all right, so next is our money illusion. So for oh man, slow. Come on, show me next slide. Oh, just okay. Okay, here, like go back. It's pressed too many times. All right, so money illusion. This changes whenever the price change, the nominal price change, but our consumer believe this might be a real price change. So difference is your nominal price is the price you see on the sticker. The real price is how much good you can buy with the price on the sticker. Okay, so one example, think about your paycheck. So if your paycheck is increasing, that's a nominal change. You might be feeling pretty good because you have more money now. But what if the price of everything else is also increasing? Then you are not that much better off, right? So therefore, this is called money illusion, that more than often our consumers will base our judgment on how much money we spend based on judgment based on our nominal income, not real income. And then this is also the reason why the companies, they tend to very reluctantly give employees a pay increase, because you can always give employees a pay increase. Everybody will be happy with that. But if you ever want to give employee a pay decrease, nobody will accept that, right? So that's why that for this pay, for this wage over here, it's more common for the wage to go up, but less common for wage to go down. Therefore, if the wage ever goes down, workers will change behavior. The workers will find a job somewhere else. So that's why whenever you have a price level change, so let's go back to our chicken fried rice business. You guys gonna buy more chicken fried rice after watching this, okay? So imagine that for our business, let's say we pay our wage for employees. We pay wage at $10 per hour. So this will be my chef, my helps, my waiters, I'll pay them $10 per hour. Let's suppose the price of chicken fried rice. So this is the price I sell to customers. If this price goes down, well, that means I will receive less revenue, right? So so normally I will ask my employees to take a pay cut. So I'll tell them, hey guys, instead of $10, I will pay everybody $9 now. But you know what? People won't be happy, because if I pay them $9, they'll be going on the door, they'll be looking for other jobs. So instead of paying people $9, more than likely what company would do, then when they have a hard time, they would decrease the number of workers needed in the economy. So they actually decrease the real output. Vice versa, if the chicken fried rice price goes higher, so I can sell my chicken fried rice at a higher price now, I have more revenue. But instead of giving everybody a raise, so paying everybody $11, I might be thinking, I might not want to do that anymore, because if I pay everybody $11, it's easier to give everybody a pay raise. But what if next month my business slow down again? I cannot take the pay raise away from them, right? So I tend to keep the pay at the same level. But what we'll ask them to do, I'll ask each person to put in more hours. So produce more chicken fried rice. So real GDP increases. Okay, so that's why for this wage over here, the companies, they're very reluctant to change our wage, and the wage is pretty fixed, pretty steady. Okay, so that's called money illusion. All right, so whenever you have a shift in your aggregate supply curve, if it's increasing, you'll be shifting to the right. Decreasing, you'll be shifting to the left. And then you will only shift your aggregate supply curve whenever there is a change in resource price, whenever there's a change in the expectation for prices, or whenever you have a supply shock. So supply shock, there are surprising events that happens that will change your firm's production cost. That's called supply shock. So such as a change in the price of oil, or the change in the price of labor. Okay, so those will be our supply shocks. Again, if it's increasing, we're shifting to the right. Decreasing, we're shifting to the left. Now, however, every time if your long run aggregate supply curve shift, you will shift that of your short run as well. So if your long run curve shifted to the right, then your short run will be shifting to the right as well. So you're going to shift both of them. But if this three happens, you will only shift your short run. Your long run will stay the same, wouldn't shift it. Okay, so let's see how this works. All right, so in the long run aggregate supply curve, that for our long run equilibrium, is where the all three lines intersect. So your aggregate demand curve, aggregate supply curve, and then this is aggregate demand and long run aggregate supply curve all intersect in the same point. That's your long run equilibrium. Now for the long run equilibrium, from that point you will see what is the real GDP for the economy, and also what is the unemployment and what's the price level in the economy. So let me draw this on this notes over here. So long run aggregate supply curve, short run aggregate supply curve, and then our aggregate demand curve. Now, this intersection here in the middle, this is our long run equilibrium. So this will give you what is the real GDP for the economy, which means this is your natural rate of unemployment. And then this will also give you what is the price level for the economy. Now, if your price level increases, that's inflation. Anytime price level decreases, it's deflation. Okay, and also if you're ever to the left of your long run aggregate supply curve, that's a recession. Anytime you're to the right, this would be expansion, or economy getting better, or economic growth. But left recession, right expansion. Okay, so let's see how this works. Let me show you this. All right, so we can use our ASAD model to determine how economy changes whenever there is a economic condition change for the entire economy. Okay, so therefore the couple of 5 steps. So first, draw the regular long run aggregate supply curve, aggregate demand curve, and then short run aggregate supply curve, and then find out which one you're gonna shift. Once you know which one you're gonna shift that curve to the right direction. And then step 4, compare your new long run, short run equilibrium points. And lastly, just find out if it's increasing or decreasing. Okay, so so let's suppose we have a technology shock. So something happened to our technology. Now remember, technology, resource, and then your institution, those are all part of your long run aggregate supply curve. So whenever your long run aggregate supply curve shift, you're gonna shift your short run aggregate supply curve too. Okay, so this long run change will lead into a short run change as well. But if your short run change, it doesn't necessarily mean that your long run will change. Okay, so make sure know the difference. Okay, but if your long run changing, that means for sure short run changing. But if short run changing, doesn't mean long run changing. And then inward direction. If you're getting better technologies, then both will be shifting to the right. But if you ever lose technology, then both will be shifting to the left. And once you have the new shift, you can compare what is the new equilibrium, what is the old equilibrium, and then you will see how the price level changes or how the quantity level changes, and that's your real GDP. Okay. All right, so in this case here, so this is the example we have in the book. You have a better technology, so technology increases. When technology increases, your long run curve is shifting to the right. That's a better output, more potential. Your short run curve also shift to the right, and then you're gonna have this from point A, that's our old equilibrium, to our point B, our new equilibrium. And then your real GDP is increased. Well, that makes sense, right? Because you have better technologies. Of course, you can produce more good. Also, our price level goes down. Well, that's all what we expected too. Because with better technologies, you can produce more good cheaper. So therefore, price level go down. Okay. But you know, guys, let's do one over here. So let's do one on a separate paper. Okay, so let me show you how this actually works. So let's suppose we have a oil pipe break. So this would be on the short run supply curve. Now for the short run supply curve, these changes are more complex. So make sure to look at it more carefully. Okay, so let's do it together. All right, so first we start drawing our regular supply demand curve graph. So long run aggregate supply curve, short run aggregate supply curve, and then we'll have our aggregate demand curve right here. All right, let's label this. So this is our P star, that's our initial price level, and then we'll have our real GDP. Give me some more space. There. So that's our potential output. Okay, so right now economy is in equilibrium. Now, when you have a oil pipeline breaks, so we have less amount of oil available in the economy, so oil price will go up. So oil price goes higher. Now, when oil price goes higher, this will change our short-run aggregate supply curve. For short-run aggregate supply curve, we're going to decrease it. Okay, so this will be shifting to the left. So I have a new short-run aggregate supply curve, and this will be where the new price level is. Let's call this P1. This is our new real GDP. Okay, now if you compare the real GDP, see how it's decreasing now, right? That means the economy is going into recession. At the same time, we have a higher price level. That's inflation. Now, so which means if you have a shock in your supply curve, in your aggregate supply, you're going to end up with a recession if it's a negatively impacting your aggregate supply curve. But it doesn't end over here. Because stuff still happens. Now let's see what else happens. So if you just keep letting this happen by itself, the economy will self-adjust. And the reason why we self-adjust, remember, in the long run, all prices are flexible, especially wage become flexible. Now when wage become flexible, so during recessions, because this is to the left of our long run curve, so during recession, workers goes unemployed, so unemployment rate goes higher. At a higher unemployment rate, workers will compete. When workers compete, your wage become flexible and wage will go down. When wage goes down, it's cheaper for company to produce good. And what do company do? Company produce more good. So you're going to shift your aggregate supply curve back to where it was before. So you're actually going back to this long run equilibrium. Okay, so if you allow the economy to self-adjust by itself, then eventually the economy will self-recover. Once unemployment goes higher, wage goes lower, and then aggregate supply curve will be shifting back to the left. All right, makes sense? So with a shock, you have a recession, but with a recession, economy will self-adjust. So for this over here, you go from point A to point B at the initial shock. Once the economy becomes self-adjusting again, wage goes down, and then your aggregate supply curve will be shifting to the right. So you go back to point A. So you're self-adjusting back to where you were before. Now, if you have an aggregate demand curve shift, it's very similar. You're gonna also have this self-adjustment process. So let's see how this will work. Show me this. All right. So again, we start with our regular aggregate supply curve. So short run aggregate supply curve, aggregate demand curve. Now we have our long run aggregate supply curve. This is the price level. This is real GDP. Give me some more room. So this is our initial price level. This is our initial real GDP level. Okay. Now let's suppose something happened to the economy. So let's say the example in the PowerPoint says there are more consumer confidence. With more consumer confidence, then consumers feel very confident about the future. And what do? We spend more money. Now, when you're spending more money, consumption goes higher, and then your aggregate demand curve will be shifting to the right. So 82. Now, at 82, you see how you have this new intersection here, right? So let's go down. So real GDP 2, and then this will be price level 2. All right, so our economy goes through expansion. At the same time that we're going to have a higher price levels inflation. Now, you see how this point is actually away from our long run aggregate supply curve. If you're away from long run aggregate supply curve, you will go back to your long run aggregate supply curve because that's not a stable solution for the economy. That's not a long run solution. So at this expansion, when the price level is increasing, in the long run, your wage will go up. Because once the price level increases, imagine that you're working for a company, and then the company pay you the same wage for the entire year, but during the entire year, the price of everything else increases. So if your wage is the same, you're actually making less money than before. So what you do once you talk to your boss at your annual review, you're going to ask for a higher wage because the price of everything else is increasing. So when you're asking for a higher wage goes higher, company will hire less people, and the aggregate demand curve will be going down. So what's going to happen is that once in the long run, wage become more flexible, wage increases during expansion, your aggregate demand curve will be shifting back to where it was before. So it'll be back to your AD1, which is also your new AD3. Okay, so you're actually going back to your long run potential. Okay, so just remember the long run aggregate supply curve is also our long run potential. Even though you can have this short-term fluctuations to the right or to the left, but in the long run, you'll be all going back to your aggregate supply curve, because that's your long run aggregate supply curve. So that's where the economy will end up in the long run, unless you have a change in your long run aggregate supply curve. So unless you have a better technology, and then your long run aggregate supply curve shift to the right, and then you might end up over here. But if you don't have any long run change, you will always go back to the same long run before. And that's a self-adjustment process. Okay. All right. So we talk about this. So for our example here, you go from your point A to point B. Oh, you know what, guys? I'm so sorry. I made a mistake here. My bad. Sorry, guys. Let me go back. This is my fault. I wasn't thinking right. Been talking too much. Let me draw this again. Okay. So short run aggregate supply curve. The mistake I made is right here. This is the mistake I made. That when you have a wage increase, your aggregate demand curve wouldn't change. What changes is your short run aggregate supply curve will change. This will decrease. Okay, so let's draw this one more time. So we have expansion. So AD curve shifting to the right due to more consumer confidence. So AD2, that's your price level 2. This would be your real GDP 2. And then right here, price level 1. And then real GDP 1. All right, so we said once the wage become more flexible, so wage increases, this will decrease our short run aggregate supply curve, because the more it's more expensive on the company side to produce stuff, then company produce less of the stuff. So aggregate supply curve will be shifting to the left. This is your short run aggregate supply curve 2. All right, so you're gonna go from this was your first intersection right here. Give me red. Right here was your second intersection, and then right here is our third intersection. So in the long run, you'll be going from point 1 to point 2 and then back to point 3. So again, you're all going back to this long run potential. Okay, so your real GDP didn't change. We'll go back to what your potential output is. What changes is they're gonna end up with a even higher price level. That's just inflation. Okay, so that's what the example we have in the book. So you go from point A to point B and then back to point C. Once your wage become higher, and then short run aggregate supply curve will be shifting to the left. Okay, so you go back to point C where the long run potential output is. All right, okay, so guys, that's it for this chapter. I know it's a little confusing. Sorry about the mistake, but have any question, let me know. So this is a very difficult chapter to understand. Watch this video 3-4 times if it helps, or have any questions, email me. Okay, so guys, good luck, and I will see you for next chapter. All right, bye-bye.